Summon the proprietor immediately. Serena's shriek shattered the restaurant's ambience like a hurled projectile. Every patron's head swiveled in unison. I was seated in my secluded alcove, my coffee barely tasted, when my daughter-in-law made a dramatic entrance into the main salon. She was on the arm of my son, Marcus, surrounded by a retinue of impeccably dressed companions. Serena was resplendent in a crimson designer gown, a palpable symbol of opulence, adorned with jewels that sparkled beneath the opulent crystal chandeliers. Then her gaze locked onto mine, her features contorting into an expression of utter revulsion. "What on earth is this elderly woman doing here?" The words cascaded from her lips like a venomous stream, amplified for a significant portion of the establishment to overhear. I felt every pair of eyes brand me, my faded grey cardigan, my comfortable footwear, my hair secured in a simple chignon. I was an unsightly blemish on their otherwise flawless evening. Marcus hurried over, his complexion flushed, not with righteous indignation at his wife's discourtesy towards me. He was mortified by my presence. "Mother," he hissed through gritted teeth, "what are you doing in a place like this? Look at your attire. Heavens, this is mortifying. My own son, my sole offspring." The declaration struck me with the force of a physical blow, yet I maintained my composure. My hands fluttered slightly as they cradled the coffee cup, but I remained silent. Serena was already imperiously snapping her fingers at the waiting staff, her voice escalating in pitch. "I demand to speak with the manager at once. This woman is not welcome here. This is a prestigious establishment, not a public refuge. Escort her from the premises immediately." A chorus of whispers rippled through the room. Elegant couples at neighboring tables observed us with a mixture of morbid fascination and palpable disapproval. Some women regarded me with a semblance of pity, while others projected disdain, as if my very existence tainted the refined atmosphere. Marcus and Serena's companions attempted to suppress uncomfortable snickers. One of them murmured something about individuals who lack self-awareness regarding their social standing. Marcus leaned in conspiratorially, his breath warm against my ear. "Mother, please, we are entertaining crucial investors. You are going to jeopardize everything. Can you not simply depart? There are more modest eateries in the Northern District. Go there. Investors, significant figures." It was an eternal refrain. I was perpetually deemed inadequate, insufficiently sophisticated, modern, or of any consequential value. Serena continued her theatrical pronouncements, her voice reaching near frantic crescendos. "This is utterly unacceptable. We pay a substantial sum for an exclusive dining experience, and this is what we encounter. Where is the owner? I insist on speaking with the owner immediately." She pointed at me as though I were refuse requiring urgent disposal. Her companions nodded in shared scandal, exchanging hushed comments about the audacity of certain individuals. A young server approached nervously, attempting to de-escalate the situation. Serena cut him off before he could utter a word. "I require no apologies. I want the manager. I want the owner. Someone must address this transgression." The hapless young man practically sprinted towards the administrative offices. Marcus meticulously avoided my gaze, focusing instead on maintaining a strained smile for his investors, striving to minimize the unfolding drama. I remained seated, feeling as though 66 years of existence had culminated in this singular moment of profound degradation. My own son desired to expunge me from his life's narrative. The seconds stretched into eternities. Serena seized every opportunity to inflame the situation further. I simply cannot fathom it. Can you? One comes to celebrate, to finalize significant agreements, and one is subjected to this predicament. She likely infiltrated the premises without a reservation, Or worse, someone took pity and admitted her. Her friends erupted in laughter, that cruel amusement so familiar among women who relish subjugating others. One of them added, "Poor thing, she likely observed the establishment from outside and imagined she could convincingly blend in." The laughter intensified. Then Anthony, or Tony, Davis made his appearance. The restaurant manager approached our table with his signature composed elegance, his suit immaculate, his posture erect, his professional smile betraying nothing. Serena immediately confronted him. "Finally, I require you to remove this woman at once. She is ruining the experience for everyone. Observe her attire. This is deeply embarrassing for your establishment." Tony listened intently, nodding subtly, his expression entirely impassive. Then his gaze alighted upon me. For a fleeting instant, something flickered in his eyes, something Serena, too absorbed in her moment of perceived authority, failed to notice. Marcus interjected, attempting to project an air of authority. "Look, we do not wish to escalate this further. Simply handle it with discretion. Escort her out via the service entrance if necessary." Through the kitchen, as if I were refuse unworthy of utilizing the primary entrance. Tony drew a deep breath, then, with a composure that starkly contrasted with Serena's hysterics, he turned his full attention towards me. His subsequent words fell like bombshells into the expectant hush of the dining room. "Madam Proprietor, how would you prefer I address these patrons?" Proprietor? The word resonated in the charged atmosphere. I watched Serena's expression freeze. Marcus's eyes widened in bewilderment, and the murmurings abruptly ceased. Tony awaited my response with profound respect, his hands clasped before him, his posture deferential. I had yet to move a muscle, my coffee now chilled between my trembling digits. 66 years of age, 5 years a widow, a lifetime dedicated to constructing an enterprise my own children knew nothing about. And here I was in my own restaurant, treated as an inconvenience by the family to whom I had devoted everything. The ensuing silence was deafening. Proprietor. The word echoed in the air like a reverberating bell. I observed Serena blinking, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Marcus had paled considerably, his hand gripping the back of a nearby chair as if seeking physical support. The investors exchanged confused glances. Serena's companions had ceased their mirth. Tony remained by my table, anticipating my instructions with a loyalty born of years of collaboration and mutual regard. Yet I still found myself unable to speak. A lump the size of my fist constricted my throat. For this moment, this public humiliation at the hands of my own kin was merely the culmination of 5 years of accumulated contempt. 5 years prior, upon the demise of my husband, I also lost my identity in my son's estimation. Robert, or Rob, had been my partner for 42 years. Together we had forged everything from its nascent stages. We arrived in the city with naught but aspirations and hands eager for labor. He was the culinary artist, I the administrator. Our inaugural eatery was a modest space in a neglected sector of the North End. We toiled 16 hours daily. Marcus grew up amidst the dining tables and kitchens, completing his assignments amidst the fragrant symphony of spices and the clatter of tableware. Yet he never valued this upbringing. To him we were mere purveyors of food, service, personnel. Nothing glamorous, nothing to boast about to his associates from his private university. When Rob succumbed unexpectedly to a severe cardiac episode, I was devastated. But I was also bequeathed something Marcus remained oblivious to: a consortium of 7 upscale dining establishments strategically positioned throughout the city. What commenced as that humble neighborhood establishment had evolved into a culinary empire valued in the millions of dollars. Rob and I had labored assiduously and discreetly, reinvesting every profit, expanding judiciously. We never paraded our success. We never resided in opulent manors. We maintained our unpretentious residence in the North End, our point of origin. We continued to dress simply. The wealth was vested in the businesses, in property, in investments, not in ostentatious displays. Following the memorial service, Marcus appeared, accompanied by Serena. They had been married for 2 years at that juncture, but the sombre occasion marked her initial revelation of her true disposition towards me. While I wept beside my late husband's casket, I overheard her confide to a friend, "Poor Marcus, now he must bear the burden of the old woman. She likely cannot even sustain herself." Those words stung profoundly, yet I was too consumed by grief to confront her. Marcus uttered no protest. He neither defended me nor refuted her assertion. He simply inclined his head in a gesture of resignation, as though I were indeed an encumbrance he was now compelled to tolerate. The subsequent months proved illuminating. Marcus deigned to visit solely when requiring financial assistance. "Mother, I have obligations. The condominium, the vehicle. Serena wishes to redecorate." I invariably provided him with funds. 500 here, 1,000 there. He never inquired about the source of my income. He presumed it derived from my husband's savings, a modest widow's stipend, something finite that would eventually be depleted. I deliberately withheld information regarding the restaurants. I cannot precisely articulate the reason. Perhaps I harbored an intuition that such knowledge would irrevocably alter the dynamics of our relationship. Perhaps I sought to safeguard the final vestiges of Rob's legacy. Perhaps deep within I already harbored the conviction that my son did not love me for my intrinsic self, but for the advantages I could confer. Serena exacerbated the situation considerably. She hailed from a family of means, or at least that was her persistent assertion. Her father operated businesses, her mother orchestrated charitable functions. Serena had attended privileged educational institutions and travelled extensively throughout Europe. In her estimation, I was the mortifying mother-in-law, the impoverished widow from a humble locale. At family gatherings, she introduced me with an air of condescension. "This is Eleanor, Marcus's mother. She resides in the old neighbourhood where they once operated their small eatery." Small eatery, as if 40 years of diligent effort were inconsequential, as if Rob's labour deserved no recognition. 2 years ago, my grandson Elias was born, my sole male heir. During Serena's pregnancy, I meticulously prepared blankets, purchased garments, and assembled everything with the unbridled joy of a first-time grandmother. On the day of his birth, I waited 12 hours at the hospital. Upon finally being granted access, Serena regarded me with visible irritation. "Only 15 minutes. I am fatigued, and we are expecting important guests shortly." 15 minutes with my grandson. That was all. In the ensuing weeks, I attempted to visit them. I brought homemade provisions, modest tokens of affection. Serena invariably concocted excuses. "We are occupied. The infant is sleeping. We have a pediatrician's appointment. Perhaps another day." Another day that perpetually failed to materialize. Marcus ceased responding to my calls. My messages remained unanswered. I persisted, driven by the gnawing ache of not seeing my grandson, until 6 months prior, I presented myself at their condominium unannounced. I rang the doorbell repeatedly. Serena eventually opened the door, her eyes blazing with fury. "What part of we are occupied do you fail to comprehend? That is sufficient, Eleanor. Your behavior is intrusive, desperate, and pathetic." The door was summarily slammed in my face. I heard Elias crying within, my grandson, while I stood outside like an unwelcome stranger. That evening I wept until my tear ducts were utterly depleted. I contacted Brenda, my lifelong confidant. She was privy to the entire narrative. She knew of the restaurants, the properties, every detail. Eleanor, Brenda stated with unyielding resolve, you must cease allowing this to transpire. You are a formidable woman. Stop grovelling for meagre fragments of affection. But I could not. He was my son, my sole remaining family. I continued to provide him with funds when requested. I swallowed my pride with every instance of Serena's humiliation. I endured invisibility, perpetually apprehensive of losing them entirely, terrified of facing absolute solitude in this world. 3 months ago, Marcus contacted me, his first communication in weeks. My heart soared with renewed hope. Mother, I need to see you. I harbored the naive expectation of reconciliation. I prepared my most cherished meal. I tidied my home meticulously. He arrived alone, unaccompanied by Serena or Elias. He took a seat in my modest living room, surveying his surroundings with that air of superior condescension he had so expertly cultivated. Mother, I require $5,000. It is imperative. I have investments. I observed him, truly observed him, for the first time in months. My son, 38 years of age, attired in an expensive suit and a timepiece exceeding the value of my automobile, soliciting funds from his impoverished mother. Investments? I inquired softly. Yes, business-related matters. You would not comprehend. Simply state whether you possess the funds or not. I presented him with the money, withdrawn from my personal account, where I kept cash for daily expenditures. He accepted the envelope without so much as counting it and departed without partaking in the coffee I had prepared, without inquiring about my well-being, without a hug, without any semblance of warmth. That evening, Brenda contacted me, her voice laced with agitation. Eleanor, you must be apprised of a development. My niece is employed in public relations. She observed Marcus and Serena at a corporate function. They were boasting about their impending launch of a high-end dining establishment, proclaiming they have secured investors and that it will be the city's most exclusive venue. A chill permeated my very being. My financial contributions, my years of discreet support, all serving to underwrite a dream that deliberately excluded me. An eatery poised to rival my own, financed with my own capital, with them utterly unaware of my competitive standing. It was at that precise moment that I resolved upon a course of action. I would not disclose my knowledge, not yet. I would observe, I would ascertain the extent of their contempt, how far they were prepared to drag me down before I revealed the truth. I continued my unassuming existence, discreetly visiting my establishments, meeting with Tony and my other managers in private chambers. I persisted in wearing my modest attire, residing in my humble abode. But internally, a profound transformation had occurred. The pain had transmuted into something colder, more resilient, more absolute. And then this evening unfolded, a dinner that was intended to be tranquil. This encounter where my own family dragged me through the mire in the presence of strangers. Tony's question still hung in the air, awaiting my response. I slowly elevated my gaze to meet Tony's. I perceived the genuine concern in his eyes, the unwavering loyalty forged through years of shared endeavor. But I also discerned something else. He was anticipating my assertion of self-defense, the establishment of boundaries, the cessation of their persistent disregard. My voice emerged with less strength than I had desired. Tony, please allow them to conclude their meal in peace. I was departing in any case. I rose, my legs quivering slightly. I retrieved my worn handbag, avoiding the eyes of all present. Tony's brow furrowed, clearly disheartened by my reply, yet he inclined his head with practiced professionalism. I walked past Marcus without acknowledging him, past Serena, whose expression now registered a peculiar blend of confusion and tentative triumph. I exited the restaurant with my head bowed. acutely aware of the numerous gazes fixed upon my retreating form. Outside, the crisp night air brushed against my face, and then finally the tears began to flow. It was not the initial instance of their humiliation of me. Heaven knows it was not. This was merely the final drop that overflowed a vessel that had been silently accumulating its contents for years. I recalled that Christmas. 18 months prior, Serena had hosted a family gathering at their condominium. She extended an invitation to me, but with explicit stipulations. Eleanor, please endeavour to present yourself appropriately. Marcus's parents will be in attendance, that is, my family. We do not wish them to perceive us as, well, you understand. What did she not want them to perceive? That her husband originated from working-class stock? That her mother-in-law eschewed designer apparel? I arrived at that dinner clad in a green pullover I had acquired specifically for the occasion. It was not extravagant, but it was new and suited me well. I carried a cake I had baked myself, employing my grandmother's cherished recipe. I knocked on the door, my heart brimming with nascent hope. Perhaps this time would prove different. Perhaps we could finally achieve the status of a genuine family. Serena opened the door. She scrutinized me from head to toe, her smile tightening perceptibly. "Oh, you arrived," she remarked, as if my presence were an unwelcome surprise, despite her own invitation. She admitted me, but not to the main dining area where the gathering was in progress. She directed me to the kitchen. "Kindly leave the cake here. You should wait a moment before joining us. Not everyone has arrived as yet." I stood in that kitchen like an employee awaiting directives. I could discern the mirth emanating from the dining room, the animated exchanges. Serena's parents had arrived, her sister, close associates. 20 minutes elapsed, then 30. Finally, I ventured out of my own volition. Upon entering the dining room, the conversation abruptly ceased. Serena practically leaped from her chair. "Eleanor, so glad you could emerge. Permit me to introduce you to everyone." She proceeded with that artificial smile I had come to recognize so intimately. "This is Marcus's mother. She resides in the North End. She possesses a rather quaint little residence." Quaint little residence, a coded reference to an insignificant, impoverished individual. Serena's mother, a woman adorned with an excessive amount of Botox and ostentatious jewelry, regarded me with an expression one reserves for an insect. "Oh, how charming! And what did your husband do?" Past tense, as if Rob's existence merited no remembrance. "We owned restaurants," I stated simply. Serena swiftly interjected. "A small establishment, you know, comfort food, nothing particularly refined. It is no longer operational." A fabrication. She possessed no knowledge of the facts, yet she succeeded in rendering me even more inconsequential. The remainder of the dinner proved to be an ordeal. I was seated at the far end of the table, distanced from the epicenter of attention. No one addressed me. When I attempted to contribute to a discourse, Serena abruptly diverted the topic. My cake remained sequestered in the kitchen. At the conclusion of the meal, she presented a dessert procured from an exclusive patisserie, extolling it as if it were the sole confection of the evening. As I bid farewell, Marcus did not even rise from his seat. "Bye, mother, drive safely." That was all. I returned home and unceremoniously disposed of my cake in the refuse bin. I wept over the sink, questioning when I had effectively lost my son, when I had transformed into an embarrassing impediment rather than the mother who had bestowed upon him everything. That night I contacted Brenda, my sobs uncontrollable. She came to my residence, embraced me, and allowed me to weep on her shoulder. "Eleanor, that is enough. You must put a stop to this. How much longer will you tolerate this treatment?" But I could not. I clung to the faint hope that they would undergo a transformation, that one day Marcus would recall who had nurtured him, who had loved him unconditionally. Then came Elias's birthday. My grandson reached his first year. Serena disseminated photographs on social media depicting an elaborate celebration, complete with themed decorations, a professionally arranged dessert spread, entertainers, and scores of guests. I was not extended an invitation. I remained unaware of the festivities until I perused the images online. My grandson extinguishing his inaugural candle, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, while I, his grandmother, was utterly excluded. I dispatched a message to Marcus. I observed the photographs from Elias's birthday celebration. He appeared utterly charming. I regret I could not be present. His reply arrived 3 hours later. It was a modest gathering, mother, only immediate family. Immediate family. I was not considered part of that circle. Those words fractured something within me that could not be mended. 2 weeks subsequently, they appeared at my home without prior notification. It was a Saturday morning. I was still in my pajamas, my residence in a state of disarray. I opened the door in a state of surprise. Marcus entered without a greeting, his gaze sweeping over the room with evident disapproval. Mother, we must discuss something of consequence. Serena followed him, cradling Elias. My heart leaped within my chest upon the sight of my grandson. Instinctively, I extended my arms. Serena recoiled, shielding the infant as if I posed a threat. He is fatigued. They occupied my well-worn sofa. Marcus commenced without preamble. Mother, Serena and I have conferred. We need you to comprehend a certain matter. We lead demanding lives with responsibilities and a son. We cannot be perpetually preoccupied with your welfare. Preoccupied, as if they had ever demonstrated such concern. I do not comprehend, I murmured, my voice barely audible. Serena sighed with dramatic flair. Eleanor, you are advancing in years. You reside alone. Eventually, you will require assistance, care. We wish to make it unequivocally clear that we cannot assume responsibility for that. You should commence investigating assisted living facilities suited for individuals of your age group and those requiring professional supervision. They were orchestrating my placement in a nursing home. I was 64 years of age at that time. I was in perfect health, actively engaged, yet to them I was already a future liability they sought to preemptively address. I am perfectly well, I managed to articulate. I require no assistance. Marcus shook his head. Mother, let us be pragmatic. This residence is in a state of deterioration. Your vehicle is 15 years old. Your financial resources are scarcely adequate for your sustenance. We cannot perpetually provide you with financial support. Subsidizing me, I who had provided him with thousands of dollars over the years, I who possessed more wealth than he would ever accrue. Yet I maintained my silence. I continued to safeguard my secret as if it were the sole vestige of dignity I possessed. Serena added with a disingenuous sweetness, moreover, when you pass on, we must consider practicalities. This residence, your possessions, we do not wish Marcus to be burdened with legal complications. They were plotting my demise, openly discussing my inheritance as if I were already a wraith. Truly, Serena chimed in, it would be convenient if you furnished us with a copy of your testament to ensure everything remains in order, thereby preventing any unforeseen complications. Marcus concurred. It makes perfect sense, Mother. We are your sole remaining kin. Elias is your only grandchild. All that you possess will eventually be ours, regardless. It's far better to have it clearly defined now. I observed them both. My son, his face etched with impatience. My daughter-in-law, her smile a masterpiece of calculation. My grandson, utterly unaware of my identity. A profound and irreversible hardening took root within me. I will consider it, I finally stated. Marcus's brow furrowed. There isn't much requiring contemplation, Mother. Yet he pressed no further. They departed with haste, leaving me in the oppressive quiet of my residence, a silence that pressed down with the weight of lead. That very afternoon, I contacted my legal counsel. I need to revise my will, I informed him, and I require it to be utterly impregnable. Over the subsequent weeks, I meticulously rearranged every aspect of my affairs. My dining establishments, my real estate holdings, my financial accounts. I established trusts for my most devoted employees. I allocated significant bequests to various charitable institutions. For Marcus, I resolved to bequeath precisely what he believed I possessed: my modest dwelling and $10,000 in a savings account. The remainder, the millions he remained oblivious to, would be allocated to individuals who genuinely cherished what Rob and I had painstakingly built. Yet I maintained my silence regarding this redistribution. A small, foolish corner of my heart still harbored the hope that he would awaken, that he would recall his better nature, that he would revert to the boy who once embraced me and declared, "I love you, Mum." I continued to respond to his calls, each one a plea for financial assistance. I endured the indignities with stoicism. I persisted in being the invisible mother he only sought out when it suited his convenience. Until this evening, until he attempted to eject me from my own restaurant as if I were refuse. I made my way to my vehicle, parked 2 blocks away. The same vehicle Marcus had so frequently disparaged. Tears blurred my vision. My mobile device rang. It was Brenda. "Where are you?" Tony had contacted her. He recounted everything. Her voice was thick with indignation. "Eleanor, cease this. Stop shielding them. Stop concealing yourself. It is time they understood your true essence." "I cannot," I replied to Brenda, my voice cracking. "They are my family. He is my son." I detected her sigh of exasperation on the other end of the line. "Eleanor, listen to me carefully. Family does not treat you in this manner. Family does not publicly humiliate you. Family does not exploit you as an automated teller machine while simultaneously spitting in your face." She was correct. I knew it in my soul. However, a mother's heart operates on a different logic. "Grant me some time," I implored. "Simply give me a little more time." Brenda was silent for a considerable interval. Then, her tone softening, she said, "Very well, but promise me that when the moment arrives to defend yourself, you will. Promise me you will not permit them to dismantle you." I gave her my word, though I harbored doubts about my capacity to uphold it. I drove home, silent tears streaming down my face, feeling as though each mile propelled me not only away from the restaurant, but also from the last remnants of hope I clung to. The ensuing days were peculiar. Marcus made no attempt to apologize, to offer an explanation, or even to request further funds. Nothing. It was as if the preceding night at the restaurant had never transpired. As if my public dismissal was so commonplace that it warranted no follow-up discussion. I adhered to my established routine, discreetly visiting my other establishments, scrutinizing financial statements, and meeting with managers in secluded offices where my presence remained unnoticed. Externally, I was still Eleanor, the unassuming widow. Internally, I felt like a structure riddled with increasingly profound fissures on the verge of collapse. One afternoon, 2 weeks subsequent to the incident, Brenda arrived at my home bearing significant information. She sat opposite me in my modest living room, her countenance grim. "You must be made aware of something," she stated. My niece, the one in public relations, provided me with additional details. My stomach clenched. Marcus and Serena are facing severe financial distress. I leaned forward, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What sort of predicament?" Brenda retrieved her mobile device, displaying a series of screenshots. They have amassed over $200,000 in debt, maxed out credit cards, personal loans, all to sustain the ostentatious lifestyle they project on social media. $200,000. The sum struck me with the force of a physical blow. How is this conceivable? Brenda continued, her voice imbued with severity. Those European excursions they publicize on Instagram, that exclusive condominium in Midtown with a monthly rent of $4,000. Marcus's sports car, Serena's designer attire, their extravagant parties. It's all a charade, Eleanor. It's all debt. They are financially ruined. I reclined against the sofa, processing the revelation. All this time, while they treated me as a supplicant, they were drowning in financial instability. All that arrogance, that disdain, was built upon a foundation of falsehoods and credit. There is more, Brenda added, her tone darkening further. The restaurant venture is indeed a reality, but they possess no capital. They are desperately seeking investors. That is why they were at my restaurant that day with those individuals. They were prospective investors Serena was attempting to impress. Everything suddenly coalesced into a coherent picture. Their exaggerated dramatics, their urgent need to expel me. I had disrupted their carefully crafted image of a sophisticated, prosperous couple. A humble mother-in-law did not align with the narrative they were propagating. But here is the most distressing part, Brenda confessed, her voice laced with palpable pain. My niece overheard Serena conversing with a companion. She stated that upon your demise, they intended to sell your residence immediately, that with that financial infusion, they could extinguish some of their debt and perhaps secure the down payment for the restaurant. My home, the dwelling where Rob and I had shared 40 years of our lives, where we had raised Marcus, where every nook and cranny held echoes of a life steeped in affection and labor. To them it was merely an imminent commercial transaction. They were simply anticipating my departure to realize a financial gain. Serena had uttered the precise words. Hopefully she hurries up. That house is in an area that's appreciating. We could easily get $300,000. Brenda clasped my hand, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Eleanor, they are capitalizing on your mortality, orchestrating your funeral arrangements before you have even fallen ill. I rose, walked to the window, and gazed out at my small garden, where Rob had once diligently cultivated tomatoes. 66 years of age. Statistically, I had perhaps 15 or 20 more years of life ahead. But to my son, that was an unacceptable waiting period. I was more valuable in death than in life. What are your intentions? Brenda inquired softly. I turned towards her, and for the first time in weeks, I experienced an emotion distinct from sorrow. I felt a surge of resolve. I intend to observe, I declared. I will witness precisely the extent of their capabilities, and when the opportune moment arises, I will impart upon them a lesson they shall never forget. The subsequent weeks proved remarkably illuminating. I discreetly engaged a private investigator, not out of a desire to spy on my son, but out of a need to ascertain the complete truth. The reports arrived on a weekly basis, each one more unsettling than the last. Marcus had demonstrably falsified information on numerous loan applications, significantly inflating his income. Serena had pawned jewelry, subsequently reporting it as stolen to claim insurance payouts. They had borrowed funds from acquaintances with promises of investment returns they had no intention of honoring. The roster of individuals defrauded or deceived by their machinations grew incessantly. However, what inflicted the deepest wound was discovering an unsettling truth about Elias. My grandson was being exploited. Serena would escort him to charitable functions, orchestrate photographs with him, and disseminate them accompanied by emotionally charged narratives of benevolence towards the less fortunate. Subsequently, she would solicit donations from her followers who believed she was genuinely contributing to philanthropic organizations. The funds invariably found their way into her personal account. She was weaponizing the very innocence of her own son for the purpose of emotional deception. That piece of information fundamentally altered something within me. It was no longer a matter of personal grievance. It was about the pursuit of justice. It was about interceding to halt two individuals who clearly possessed no moral compass. I commenced to act with stealth. Initially, I consulted with my legal advisors regarding the comprehensive safeguarding of my assets. Subsequently, I discreetly initiated an investigation into the supposed investors Marcus and Serena were actively courting. It transpired that some were honourable individuals, being misled with fabricated financial projections and unattainable promises. I contemplated contacting them, issuing a warning, but Brenda intervened. "Not yet," she advised. "You require the perfect moment, the moment of maximum impact." Meanwhile, Marcus finally contacted me. 3 weeks had elapsed since the restaurant incident. His voice sounded strained. "Mother, I need to speak with you. It's imperative." My heart, that foolish organ still clinging to the belief in miracles, skipped a beat. "Are you and Elias well?" There was a pause. "Yes, we are fine. I simply need to see you. May I visit tomorrow?" I acquiesced, naturally. I prepared his favourite meal. I meticulously cleaned the house. A part of me still harboured the hope that he would arrive to offer an apology, to acknowledge his transgressions, to utter those coveted words. "I am sorry, Mother." He arrived punctually, but unaccompanied. Neither Serena nor Elias were present. He occupied the very seat where, weeks prior, he had declared me a burden. This time his posture conveyed nervousness and restlessness. "Mother, I require your assistance." No preamble of concern, no inquiry into my well-being, just a demand. "What is amiss, son?" He rubbed his face, a gesture indicative of profound stress. "I am experiencing temporary liquidity challenges, approximately $500,000. It pertains to an investment prospect I cannot afford to miss. I shall repay you within 3 months with interest, if you so desire." 3 times the amount he had ever previously requested. $500,000 is a considerable sum, Marcus. He leaned forward, his tone adopting that manipulative cadence I now recognized all too well. "Mother, this represents a unique opportunity. I am poised to triple that investment. I could finally provide you with a superior existence, remove you from this domicile, relocate you to more comfortable accommodations. To relocate me as if I were a mere parcel requiring repositioning. And if I do not possess that sum," his expression hardened ominously. "Mother, I am aware you possess savings. Father was prudent. There must be something. You could secure a loan against the residence if necessary." Against my home, he expected me to encumber my dwelling to provide him with funds he would never reciprocate. "Allow me to contemplate it," I finally responded, his features contorting in evident frustration. "There is insufficient time for contemplation. I require the funds this week, a maximum of 3 days. He stood, pacing the room like a caged predator. "You consistently engage in this behavior. You invariably complicate matters. Simply acquiesce, it is straightforward." I truly looked at him, my son, the infant I had nursed, the child I had tended to during his illnesses, the adolescent whose aspirations I had unreservedly championed, and I found no trace of that child within the man before me. "I require time to consider it," I reiterated, my voice firmer this time. He erupted. "For heaven's sake, Mother, what is there to consider? I am your son, your only family. Do you not place your trust in me?" The irony was so profound I nearly succumbed to laughter. I shall provide you with a response in 3 days, I stated, my voice betraying a calm I did not truly feel. He scoffed, grabbing his jacket. Fine, but do not compel me to beg. I have no patience for drama. He slammed the door shut. I remained seated in my deserted living room, the prepared meal untouched in the kitchen, and I made a definitive decision. It was time to relinquish my role as victim. It was time for Marcus and Serena to confront the ramifications of their actions. I contacted Tony. I require your assistance in orchestrating something, I declared, something that will irrevocably alter everything. His response was immediate. Whatever you require, Mrs. Johnson, whatever it may be. The intricate plan began to take shape, and this time I was resolute in my commitment. Over the ensuing 3 days, I worked in quietude. Tony and I convened in the administrative office of my premier restaurant, the one Rob and I had jointly conceived 20 years prior. It represented our pride, the most sophisticated establishment within our entire chain. Featuring glass walls offering panoramic city vistas, a state-of-the-art kitchen, and a wine selection rivaling the finest European establishments, it was a place of which absolutely no member of my family was aware of my ownership. Mrs. Johnson, Tony stated, seated across from me with a folder brimming with documents. I need you to elucidate precisely what you aim to achieve, as I can arrange anything you request, but I must comprehend the ultimate objective. I reclined in the leather chair, the same one Rob had occupied while reviewing menus and financial statements. I desire for Marcus and Serena to comprehend my true identity, but not in private. I require it to be public, irreversible. I need the impact to be so profound that they cannot subsequently deny or diminish it. Tony nodded slowly. Are you certain? Once your identity is revealed, everything will undergo a transformation, not only in your relationship with them, but in your entire existence. I paused, considering. My tranquil existence, my comfortable anonymity, all of that would vanish. But what purpose did such serenity serve if it was perpetually accompanied by humiliation? I am certain, I affirmed finally, it is time for my son to understand that respect is not an option. Tony opened the folder, revealing calendars and meticulously prepared lists. According to my contacts, Marcus and Serena have scheduled a pivotal dinner engagement for this Friday. They are bringing their prospective investors to this particular restaurant. It represents their final opportunity to secure the necessary capital. If they fail, their restaurant endeavor will collapse. Perfect, I breathed. It is almost too felicitous. How did you obtain that information? Tony inquired, a faint smile gracing his lips. Serena placed the reservation 2 weeks ago for 8 individuals. She specifically requested the central table, the one positioned at the heart of the dining area. She desires for everyone to witness their meeting. She aims to stage a spectacle of success. Naturally, I mused, everything with Serena was a theatrical performance. Everything was a facade. Then here is my strategy, I proposed, leaning forward. I shall be present that evening at my customary corner table, attired as always, unobtrusively, invisibly. I will allow events to unfold organically. Tony's brow furrowed. And if they attempt to expel you once more, if the events of 3 weeks ago are repeated? I smiled, a smile devoid of warmth. I hope they attempt to expel me in the presence of their investors. I hope they humiliate me one final time, and only then will you reveal precisely who I am, but not with mere words. I wish for you to present the property deeds, the business registrations, the ownership documents. I require tangible evidence they cannot possibly refute. Tony regarded me with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. Mrs. Johnson, this will utterly dismantle them, particularly in front of individuals with whom they are attempting to conduct business. A fleeting pang of sorrow resonated within my chest. I was, after all, a mother, but I suppressed it, burying it deep within. They dismantled me first, I stated. Every day, with every slight, with every humiliation, they eroded me slowly, believing me too frail or too naive to perceive it. It is time for them to confront genuine repercussions. We dedicated the subsequent several hours to refining every minute detail. Tony would discreetly contact a select few of the investors, not to disclose anything prematurely, but to ensure their attendance. I would liaise with my legal team to procure certified duplicates of all pertinent documentation. On Wednesday, Marcus contacted me again. His voice was laced with desperation. "Mother, the 3 days have elapsed. Do you possess the funds?" I inhaled deeply. "No, Marcus, I am not providing you with the money." A pregnant silence ensued. Then his voice descended to a dangerously low register. "Are you indicating refusal? There is a distinction between inability and unwillingness." His tone was accusatory, seething with fury. "Mother, I have solicited very little from you over the years. I have never demanded anything, and on the singular occasion that I require something of paramount importance, you turn your back on me. Very little. Years of countless thousands of dollars in loans he never repaid. Years of being his personal ATM, and he referred to it as very little. My decision is final," Marcus declared, his voice rising in volume. "This is utterly preposterous. You are my mother. You are meant to support me, yet it has always been thus, selfish, solely focused on your own needs. Father was the benevolent one. You merely hoard and accumulate like a miser. I, who had provided him with every single dollar he had ever requested. I, who would have willingly sacrificed my life for him without a moment's hesitation. I regret that you perceive it in such a manner," I replied, my voice trembling yet firm. "Marcus, if you are genuinely in need of assistance, we can explore alternative solutions. I can assist you with budgeting, with debt consolidation." "I have no need for your impoverished counsel," he interjected venomously. "I required that money, and you have failed me, as always." The connection abruptly severed, I stood there, the receiver in my hand, feeling the final vestiges of hope shatter completely. I telephoned Brenda. My voice was scarcely more than a whisper. "I did it. I told him no." She exhaled in a sigh of relief. "Excellent, Eleanor. I am proud of you. I realize it was arduous." Arduous? That word barely began to encapsulate the agonizing pain I experienced. It felt akin to amputating a part of my very soul, but it was an unavoidable necessity. "Friday is the day," I informed her, "the day everything changes." Brenda pledged to remain in close proximity should I require her assistance. I spent the subsequent days enveloped in a peculiar sense of calm. I was aware that a tempest was imminent, but for the first time in years, I was the one charting its course. Friday arrived, overcast and chilling. I donned my usual attire, grey trousers, a cream-coloured cardigan, comfortable footwear, nothing remarkable. I met my reflection in the mirror before departing. 66 years stared back at me. Lines etched around my eyes, hair more silver than brown, hands bearing the marks of decades of diligent labour. This was me, Eleanor, not the formidable businesswoman, not the proprietor of a culinary empire, simply me, and finally, after years of self-imposed obscurity, I was going to allow both personas to converge. I drove to the restaurant, my heart pounding with an insistent rhythm. I arrived early at 7 o'clock. Marcus's reservation was for 8:30. Tony greeted me at the private entrance. "Everything is prepared, Mrs. Johnson," he assured me. "The documents are secured in my office. The key personnel are aware of the necessary actions upon receiving your signal." I nodded, my voice failing me. He escorted me to my customary table. that secluded corner from which I could survey the entire establishment without drawing undue attention. I ordered only tea. I was incapable of consuming food. My stomach was a knot of apprehension and anticipation. I observed as the restaurant gradually filled. Elegant couples, groups of business professionals, families celebrating milestones, ordinary life unfolding as I awaited the moment that would irrevocably alter my existence. At 20 minutes past 8, the main doors opened, and there he was, my son. Marcus entered with Serena gracefully upon his arm, followed by 6 individuals clad in expensive suits, the investors. Serena was attired in an emerald green gown that likely cost more than my automobile. Her jewelry sparkled, her makeup flawless. Marcus, impeccably presented as always, sported that disingenuous confidence he had so expertly cultivated. They did not see me, not yet. Tony personally welcomed them and guided them to the central table, precisely as Serena had requested. The table where all eyes could witness them, where they could bask in the spotlight. I took a deep, fortifying breath. The performance was about to commence. From my vantage point in the corner, I watched as they settled at the central table. Serena was in her element, her laughter boisterous, her touch upon the investor's arms imbued with calculated familiarity. Marcus unfurled folders containing financial projections, gesturing towards charts with rehearsed enthusiasm. I recognized 2 of the investors from the photographs my investigator had meticulously compiled. They were serious business individuals possessing substantial capital, the kind of people whose decisions could either propel a project to success or consign it to ruin. Serena promptly ordered champagne, the most expensive selection on the menu. I observed Marcus hesitate momentarily at the exorbitant price, but Serena disregarded his concern. "Only the finest for tonight," she proclaimed, her voice reaching my secluded corner. "We are celebrating the inception of something extraordinary." 20 minutes elapsed. I sipped my tea languidly, scarcely daring to breathe. Then it happened. Serena rose to visit the restroom, navigating on impossibly high heels that rendered her more akin to a runway model than a grounded individual. Her path fortuitously led her directly past my table. Our eyes met. I witnessed her pupils dilate in sheer astonishment, swiftly followed by a narrowing of her gaze, radiating instant fury. She halted abruptly, her lips forming a rigid line. She rapidly retraced her steps to her table, bending to impart something to Marcus in a hushed tone. I observed him turn his head, his eyes scanning the room in search of me. Upon locating me, his expression cycled through a rapid succession of emotions: surprise, profound shame, and ultimately palpable anger. He rose from the table, offering a strained apology to the investors with a tight smile. He advanced towards me with measured strides, Serena a resentful shade trailing in his wake. My pulse thrummed against my ribs, yet I maintained a steady grip on my teacup. Marcus stopped at my table, his voice a low rumble, charged with suppressed fury. "Mother, what are you doing here?" As if my presence in any public setting required his approval. "I am dining," I stated plainly. Serena leaned over the table, her gaze sharp as daggers. "Seriously? After refusing to aid your own son, you come here to flaunt your wealth? Do you even grasp the expense of this establishment?" Little did she know I knew the cost down to the last cent. Marcus's eyes flickered nervously towards their table, where the potential investors observed the unfolding drama with palpable interest. "Mother, this is paramount to me. Please do not spoil this evening. You can simply depart." Each word was a deliberate blow, but I had come too far to retreat. "I have every right to be here, just like any other patron." Serena let out a laugh, that acrid sound, chillingly familiar. Patron, please, I wager you cannot even afford the most inexpensive item on this menu. She turned, signaling for a waiter, snapping her fingers with impatience. Excuse me, we require the manager's attention. There is a developing situation that necessitates immediate intervention. The waiter, a young man named Javier, whom I had known for 3 years, glanced discreetly in my direction. I offered him a nearly imperceptible nod. Proceed, I mouthed. Immediately, madam. He responded professionally before moving away. Marcus ran a hand over his forehead, his body language a clear broadcast of anxiety. Mother, I implore you. These investors represent my sole opportunity. If this agreement materializes, I can repay every cent I've borrowed, but I need you to leave now. All the money as if he had ever harbored any intention of returning it. Serena was no longer attempting to conceal her displeasure. Her voice escalated by several decibels. This is utterly preposterous. First, she appears at our favored restaurant weeks ago, causing us embarrassment before friends. Now this, it's as if she's trailing us. Trailing me, I was the one being subjected to this ordeal for merely occupying the same space. Patrons at nearby tables began to turn, their whispers creating a low hum. A couple at an adjacent table exchanged hushed comments as they observed us. An older gentleman shook his head, his disapproval evident. Marcus, noticing the increasing attention, grew even more agitated. Serena, please lower your voice. But she was fully immersed in her performative indignation. Lower my voice? Why? I am weary of confronting these predicaments. Your mother lacks any comprehension of boundaries. She has no concept of her station. Her station. I drew a deep breath, every fiber of my being yearning to unleash the truth, but I restrained myself. Not yet. Tony then emerged, his presence exuding quiet command. Good evening, I understand there is an inconvenience. Serena launched herself at him akin to a predator upon its prey. Yes, there is a significant inconvenience. This woman, she pointed at me as if presenting damning evidence, should not be present. She is creating a disturbance. She is accosting my husband and me during a critical business engagement. I require you to escort her out immediately. Tony's gaze met mine, his expression impeccably neutral. Has the madam caused any disruption? Serena scoffed, incredulous. Disruption? Her mere presence constitutes a disruption. Observe her attire. This is an upscale establishment. You have dress codes. You uphold standards. Tony consulted a tablet, feigning a check of records. According to our logs, the madam is a regular patron. She has dined here on numerous occasions without incident. This only served to further enrage Serena. I couldn't care less how often she frequents this place. She likely pays with discount vouchers or promotional offers. We are genuine patrons. We expend actual currency here. The investors at the central table were now fully engrossed in the spectacle. One of them, a distinguished gentleman with silver hair, Mr. Arthur Davies, rose and approached us. Marcus, is there an issue? His voice was deep and authoritative. Marcus swiftly turned, his forced smile instantly reappearing. No, Mr. Davies, merely a minor familial disagreement. It is being addressed. Mr. Davies regarded me with curiosity, then Marcus. Family? Serena interjected hastily. It is Marcus's mother. She experiences certain peculiarities, you understand, advanced age. Occasionally she becomes disoriented and appears in unsuitable locations. We are attempting to manage the situation discreetly. Peculiarities. Confusion due to age. She was painting me as senile before strangers. Mr. Davies's brow furrowed slightly. I appreciate that familial situations can be complex. However, his tone had shifted. There was an unspoken disapproval in his expression, not directed at me but at them. Tony stepped in, his voice polite yet firm. "Allow me to resolve this matter appropriately. If you would grant me a moment, I shall confer with my supervisor regarding the optimal course of action." Serena scoffed. "Supervisor? Bring the owner if necessary. I wish to speak with someone possessing genuine authority." The owner? She wanted to address the owner. The irony was so potent I nearly chuckled. Tony nodded professionally. "Certainly, allow me a brief moment." He departed towards the administrative offices. Time seemed to suspend. Serena returned to her table, conversing animatedly with the investors, no doubt offering an explanation for the unfortunate circumstance involving her troublesome mother-in-law. Marcus lingered by my table for a moment longer. "Mother?" His voice was a mere whisper now, yet heavy with what sounded like desperation. "Why are you doing this? Can you not just once offer me your support?" Just once, as if decades of unwavering support held no value. "Marcus," I finally replied, my voice steadier than I felt, "I am remaining. I intend to conclude my meal and you will return to your investors and resume your meeting." His jaw tightened. "You are remarkably selfish." He turned and walked back to his table, leaving me with those words hanging in the air. Selfish. I was selfish for finally establishing a boundary, for finally occupying a space they deemed exclusively their domain. I watched Tony emerge from the offices, a leather-bound binder in his hands. Our eyes met across the expanse of the restaurant. He gave a slight nod. The moment had arrived, the pivotal juncture that would irrevocably alter everything. My heart pounded with such intensity, I believed the entire establishment could perceive it. Tony proceeded directly to Marcus's table, bypassing mine. The leather binder under his arm seemed to carry the immense weight of the secrets it contained. The entire restaurant had sensed the significance of the unfolding events. Conversations at other tables had subsided to hushed tones. Servers stood strategically, positioned to observe discreetly. Serena looked up as Tony approached, her expression one of triumph. "Finally, have you spoken with the owner? Are you going to remove this woman?" Tony placed the binder on the table with a deliberate, smooth motion. "Madam, sir, I have discussed the situation with the pertinent individual. Kindly permit me to elucidate certain aspects pertaining to this establishment." Marcus interrupted, his voice strained. "Look, we simply wish to conclude this matter swiftly. We are engaged in a critical discussion. If you would kindly request my mother to depart, we would be exceedingly appreciative. We can even extend a generous gratuity for the inconvenience." A gratuity, as if they could simply purchase their way out of an inconvenience. Tony maintained his flawless composure. "Sir, prior to proceeding, it is imperative that you comprehend a fundamental truth about this restaurant." He opened the binder, extracting the first document. It was the official business registration, bearing government seals and dates dating back 22 years. This establishment, along with 6 other culinary venues within the city, is under the umbrella of a family-owned conglomerate. Serena barely registered the document, her focus fixed on her own outrage. "That is exceptionally interesting, but I fail to grasp its relevance to our current predicament," Tony continued, unfazed. "It is entirely relevant, madam. You see, the principal proprietor of these establishments prefers to maintain a low profile. She eschews publicity and accolades, yet her presence is more frequent than many realize." He produced another document. This one contained photographic evidence. Images of Rob and myself at the inauguration of our first location. Pictures of us at award ceremonies hosted by the Culinary Association. Photographs spanning decades. Mr. Davies leaned forward, squinting to better discern the images. "Wait, that woman in the photographs?" Serena finally paid attention. Picking up one of the documents, I watched her eyes scan the text, her expression shifting from irritation to bewilderment. I do not comprehend what this signifies. Tony pointed specifically to a section of the property records. As you can ascertain from this document, the current proprietor is Mrs. Elelena Johnson, widow of Robert Johnson. She inherited the entirety of the shares upon her husband's passing 5 years ago. Since then, she has diligently maintained and expanded operations with considerable success. My full name, emblazoned on official documents that were irrefutable. Marcus had become utterly immobile, his complexion gradually draining of colour. Wait, Elelena Johnson? Serena shook her head, her voice rising once more. This is absurd. There must be an error. There has to be another Elelena Johnson. It is a common appellation. Tony presented further documents. Property deeds, financial statements bearing my signature, certifications from the Chamber of Commerce, and more recent photographs from administrative meetings where I was clearly depicted. There is no error, madam, and to dispel any lingering doubt. He turned towards me, his posture shifting to one of profound respect. He walked to my table as the entire restaurant held its breath. Madam Proprietor, I sincerely regret that you have been subjected to this disagreeable situation. How would you prefer me to proceed, Madam Proprietor? The words descended into the silence like stones dropped into a tranquil pool. All eyes shifted to me. I felt the weight of countless gazes, but the only ones that truly mattered were those of my sons. Marcus had risen, his chair scraping back, his mouth agape in sheer astonishment. Serena had paled to 3 shades, the documents trembling in her grasp. The investors exchanged knowing glances, clearly reassessing the entire scenario. I stood slowly, my legs more steadfast than I had anticipated. My voice, when it finally emerged, was calm, calmer than I had felt in years. Tony, thank you for handling this with such professionalism. I walked towards the central table, each step feeling like an eternity. Marcus instinctively recoiled as I approached, as if I were a dangerous stranger rather than his mother. Mother, I did not know. His voice faltered mid-sentence. Serena found her voice first, though it emerged as a shriek. This cannot be real. You cannot be the owner. You reside in that dreadful house. You drive that ancient car. You dress like... She did not finish, but there was no need. Like someone impoverished, someone insignificant, someone who felt no compulsion to impress anyone. I completed her unspoken thought. Like someone who built something substantial, rather than a mere facade of appearances. Mr. Davies cleared his throat, his expression now unmistakably uncomfortable. Mrs. Johnson, allow me to formally introduce myself. I am Arthur Davies, representing Davies Capital Investments. I must confess I am acquainted with your esteemed reputation within the industry. Your establishments are legendary for their quality and exceptional management. He rose, extending his hand to me with genuine deference. I clasped it, noting Serena's widening eyes as she observed the exchange with growing horror. Another investor, an elegant woman of middle age named Iris Chen, also stood. Iris Chen from the Crestwood Investment Fund. Mrs. Johnson, it is an honor. I have been endeavoring to secure a meeting with you for months. Your operational metrics are quite impressive. Marcus had retreated until he bumped against his chair, gripping its back as if it were his sole anchor. I do not comprehend why you never disclosed this. Why did you allow me to believe? His voice was a barely audible broken whisper. I met his gaze directly for the first time in months, truly seeing him. Why did I permit you to believe I was impoverished? Because I wished to ascertain if you loved me independent of financial considerations. I wanted to know if your mother held any value to you beyond what I could provide. The words emerged laden with a pain I had suppressed for years. And I received my answer, Marcus. I received it every time you requested funds without inquiring about my well-being. Every instant Serena subjected me to humiliation, and you remained silent. Every time you deliberately kept me from my grandson. Serena regained some of her former boldness, though it now sounded hollow. You deceived us. You led us to believe you were insignificant. I turned to her slowly. I did not deceive you. You made assumptions. You observed modest attire and concluded I was without worth. You witnessed humility and mistook it for poverty. You perceived simplicity and interpreted it as foolishness. My voice gained a slight edge, years of enduring humiliation transforming into articulate expression. You never inquired about my life. You never demonstrated curiosity regarding how I managed my finances or the origin of the funds I constantly provided, because you were not concerned. You merely sought what you could extract from me while maintaining your perceived superiority. The restaurant was plunged into absolute silence. Even the servers stood motionless. Marcus attempted to approach, his hand outstretched. Mother, I am sorry, I was unaware. I halted him with a look. Unaware of what, Marcus? Unaware that treating me with disdain was unacceptable? Did you require knowledge of my financial standing to extend basic respect? Tears began to stream down his cheeks. It was not my intention. Serena interrupted him, her voice now desperate. Eleanor, can we explain? There have been misinterpretations. Stress. Financial strains have led us to act in ways. Her voice trailed off as I regarded her. Financial strains. I retrieved my phone, opening the reports compiled by my investigator. Are you referring to the $200,000 in outstanding debt? The alleged insurance fraud involving jewelry, utilizing photographs of Elias to solicit fraudulent charitable donations? I watched the color completely drain from her face. The investors had risen, clearly seeking to distance themselves from the escalating situation. Mr. Davies retrieved his briefcase. I believe this is not an appropriate venue for such a discussion, Marcus. I think our prospective partnership warrants reconsideration. The other investors murmured their assent, beginning to depart. Serena watched them leave, her aspirations for funding dissolving before her eyes. The investors exited one by one, leaving Marcus and Serena alone at the table that was meant to be their triumphant moment. The plates of opulent fare remained untouched. The $300 bottle of champagne warmed in its ice bucket, its effervescence fading like my son's illusions. Serena slumped into her chair, her emerald green gown, which had moments before seemed a symbol of affluence, now resembling an inexpensive costume. Marcus remained standing, his hands trembling as he attempted to process the events that had just transpired. The entire restaurant observed, some patrons with a sense of pity, others with a degree of satisfaction at the unfolding drama. I remained there, feeling the weight of 66 years of life condensed into this singular moment. Mother? Marcus finally found his voice, though it emerged as a broken croak. Please, can we rectify this? I can account for everything. I took a step towards him, maintaining sufficient distance to observe his entire face. Account for what, precisely? Explain why, 3 weeks ago, you attempted to eject me from this very establishment. Explain why you have deliberately kept me from my grandson for 2 years. Explain why every time you looked at me, you saw shame instead of pride. Each question was a precise strike aimed at the heart of years of accumulated pain. Marcus shook his head, tears now flowing freely down his cheeks. I love you, Mother. You are my mother. You have always been important to me. I felt a tightness in my own throat with emotion, but I suppressed it. I had wept enough in private. This was the time for truths. Do not conflate need with love, Marcus. You needed me as a financial resource. You required me as an emotional safety net when it suited your convenience. But loving me would have entailed respecting me, even when you perceived me as possessing nothing to offer. I gestured towards Serena, who was now weeping silently, streaks of makeup marring her face. She dictated your trajectory, and you chose to follow it. You embraced superficial values over genuine ones. You prioritized appearances over substance, and most painfully, you opted for her approval over your mother's affection. Serena looked up, her voice issuing forth between sobs. I am sorry, Eleanor. Truly I am. I came from a background where appearances were paramount, where social standing dictated one's worth. I was unequipped to deviate from that paradigm. It was the first time I had heard her sound genuinely, vulnerably remorseful. But apologies offered after being apprehended carry a different resonance than those stemming from true contrition. Serena, I stated, my voice softer but resolute, you were presented with countless opportunities to truly know me, to look beyond my attire or my dwelling. Every time I prepared meals for you with affection, every time I knitted garments for Elias, every time I extended sincere assistance, you possessed the option to perceive me as an individual. You chose instead to view me as an impediment. Tony discreetly approached, lowering his voice to speak quietly. Mrs. Johnson, would you prefer to have privacy? Shall I prepare one of the private dining areas? I considered his offer. A part of me desired to conclude this encounter away from prying eyes, but another part, the part that had been publicly humiliated so many times, required this to be a public resolution as well. No, Tony, thank you. This must conclude here, where it began. He nodded in understanding, stepping back but remaining within proximity. Should I require his assistance? Marcus took a step towards me, his arms extended as if seeking an embrace. Mother, please grant me another opportunity. I can transform. We will be different. Serena and I can learn. Just do not abandon us. Do not abandon them. The irony was almost unbearable. Marcus, you abandoned me first, years ago, when you decided I did not fit the life you wished to project. I inhaled deeply, sensing the impending words would irrevocably alter our relationship. I came tonight not to humiliate you. I came because you needed to confront tangible repercussions. You needed to comprehend that actions carry consequences, that one cannot treat individuals as disposable and expect them to remain perpetually available when one finally requires them. I withdrew an envelope from my handbag, one I had meticulously prepared days prior with my legal counsel. I placed it on the table before Marcus. What is this? He inquired, his voice trembling. It is a letter from my attorney. It details the restructuring of my will and assets. I observed his eyes widen with panic. Mother, no! I interrupted him, raising my hand. Listen to me in its entirety before you respond. Your inheritance now comprises this residence where you grew up, along with $10,000 in cash. The remainder of my properties, restaurants, and investments will be placed into a trust designated to benefit my devoted employees, charitable organizations dedicated to feeding the indigent, and an educational fund for Elias, which he will receive upon reaching the age of 25, administered by independent third parties. Marcus accepted the envelope with trembling hands, extracting the documents. Serena read over his shoulder, her countenance shifting from shock to utter despair. You cannot do this, Eleanor, she whispered. We are your family. Elias is your grandson. My heart fractured a little further, but I maintained a firm tone. Precisely because Elias is my grandson, I have made these provisions. He will have access to education, opportunities, and financial security as an adult. However, he will receive it without your ability to access or manipulate it. And he will learn, I hope, that wealth is accompanied by responsibility and respect for others. Marcus dropped the papers onto the table, covering his face with his hands. His sobs were deep, wrenching. A maternal instinct urged me to offer comfort, to cradle him as I had when he experienced childhood nightmares. But he was no longer a child. He was a man who had made deliberate choices over many years. This does not signify a complete severance from my life, I continued, feeling my own tears threatening to surface. This situation absolutely necessitates that our connection be re-established from the ground up, founded on sincerity, mutual esteem, and entirely devoid of any financial considerations. I made direct eye contact with Serena, conveying that my participation in Elias's life would be contingent upon a drastically different set of parameters. No longer would I be the embarrassing matriarch you prefer to keep concealed, but rather an integral part of his existence, or not at all. Serena parted her lips to offer a response, but no sound emerged. Marcus lifted his gaze, his face still visibly flushed and swollen from weeping. "What must we do?" he implored, his voice thick with emotion. "Tell me what steps to take to mend this." That was precisely the wrong inquiry. This isn't about undertaking actions solely to recover my financial losses, Marcus. It's about acting because you genuinely aspire to become a better individual, because you are concerned with how your decisions impact those around you. It's about ensuring your son witnesses authentic principles guiding his upbringing rather than a facade of insincerity. I lowered myself slightly, aiming to meet his eyes directly. "When your father passed away, I lost my lifelong companion, but I believed I still had my son. Discovering that my worth was only acknowledged when you perceived an advantage for yourself was a far greater sorrow than any widowhood." My voice finally faltered on that last word, and hot tears streamed down my cheeks. The ache was present every single day, each subtle dismissal, every instant Serena verbally attacked me while you remained silent. The countless images of Elias on social media, knowing I was excluded from his world. Marcus extended his hand towards me, and this time I did not withdraw. I accepted it, feeling the chill of his trembling fingers. "I am so incredibly sorry, Mother," he confessed, his voice strained. "My regret is more profound than any words can adequately convey." I briefly squeezed his hand before releasing it. "I understand," I replied, "and perhaps, one day, your apology will suffice to reconstruct something genuine between us. However, today is not that day." I straightened my posture, dabbing my eyes with a measured dignity. Tony materialized beside me instantly, offering a pristine handkerchief. I accepted it with gratitude, wiping my face. A profound quiet settled over the restaurant. Every patron present had been a witness to an intensely personal and deeply unsettling revelation. I turned to the assembled diners, my voice ringing out clearly. "I offer my apologies for the disturbance. Please resume your meals. The champagne this evening is complimentary, courtesy of the establishment." A gentle ripple of applause began at a table towards the rear of the room, gradually spreading. It wasn't the boisterous kind of celebratory acclaim. Rather, it conveyed something more substantial, a palpable sense of respect. It was an acknowledgement. It was a demonstration of solidarity. It represented individuals who had observed an injustice being rectified, pain being articulated, and personal integrity being reasserted. I proceeded towards the exit, my head held high, with Tony accompanying me. From behind, I heard Marcus call out one final time, "Mother, please wait." I paused but did not fully turn. "I'm going to change," he stated, his voice emerging soft yet firm. "I promise." "Do not undertake this for me, Marcus," I replied. "Do it for yourself. Do it for Elias. Do it because it is the morally correct course of action." With that, I departed the restaurant, stepping out into the crisp evening air, feeling as though a significant burden had finally been lifted from my chest. The night was cool and clear as I exited the establishment. The stars shone within clarity I hadn't truly noticed in years. Brenda was waiting for me in the parking lot, leaning casually against her car. Upon seeing me, she hurried over and embraced me wordlessly. I allowed her to hold me, finally surrendering to the release now that I was beyond the scrutiny of those observing eyes. I wept into her shoulder, not solely from the emotional weight of what had just transpired, but also from an overwhelming sense of relief. The relief of finally articulating the truth, of establishing firm boundaries, of ceasing to compromise my own self-respect in pursuit of a fabricated tranquility. "You did it," Brenda murmured into my ear, her voice filled with warmth. "I am so immensely proud of you." We remained in that embrace for several minutes until my tears subsided and my breathing stabilized. I drove home in a comfortable silence, Brenda following in her vehicle to ensure my safe arrival. My humble abode greeted me with its comforting familiarity. The very walls Marcus had openly disparaged, the furnishings Serena had deemed beneath her. Everything presented itself differently now, not inherently superior or inferior, but transformed as if I had regained something I hadn't even realized was missing. I prepared a cup of tea and settled onto my accustomed sofa, the very piece of furniture where Rob used to leisurely peruse his newspaper on Sundays. Brenda joined me, patiently awaiting my thoughts. "Do you believe I was excessively harsh?" I eventually inquired. She shook her head emphatically. "You were fair," she stated. "There is a vast distinction between being severe and simply refusing to condone harmful behavior." The ensuing days were marked by an unusual quiet. My telephone rang incessantly. Marcus initiated numerous calls throughout the day, leaving lengthy messages expressing apologies, offering explanations, and making earnest pleas. Serena also reached out, her tone fluctuating between genuine contrition and a discernible undercurrent of desperation. I deliberately avoided engaging with any of these calls for the initial week. I required stillness, an opportunity to process decades of accumulated pain that I had been systematically suppressing. Tony kept me apprised of developments at the restaurant. It transpired that the account of the incident had circulated within the city's professional circles. Several local media outlets had attempted to contact me for interviews. I declined every single one. This was not a narrative intended for public dissemination. It was a deeply personal chapter of my life, my family, my private anguish. 2 weeks following that pivotal evening, I received a letter. Not a text message or an electronic mail, but a handwritten missive penned on quality stationery. It was from Marcos. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, reading words that seemed to originate from a far more profound depth than anything he had conveyed to me in years. He spoke of embarking on therapy, of engaging in candid dialogues with Serena regarding their shared principles and priorities, of divesting from their expensive condominium and relocating to more modest accommodations, of pursuing genuine employment rather than speculative ventures, and of his desire for Elias to mature with an understanding of the value of diligent labor and the importance of respecting all individuals, irrespective of their outward presentation. He made no request for financial assistance. He did not implore me to reconsider my decisions regarding the inheritance. At the conclusion of his letter, he merely expressed a hope for the opportunity to cultivate a genuine relationship. I found myself weeping as I read his words, not from sorrow, but from a more complex amalgamation of emotions. hope intertwined with a healthy dose of caution, love mingled with a necessary instinct for self-preservation. I responded with my own handwritten letter. I conveyed my appreciation for his sentiments, but emphasized that enduring actions would ultimately carry more weight than any immediate pronouncements. I indicated my willingness to proceed cautiously, with clearly defined boundaries, suggesting that we could commence with infrequent coffee meetings, engaging in conversations free from ulterior motives, and meticulously rebuilding trust, piece by piece. Above all, I expressed my profound desire to truly know my grandson, to be a present and engaged participant in his life, provided they genuinely welcomed such involvement. A month later, we convened for our inaugural coffee meeting at a neutral location. It was neither at my restaurant nor within their accustomed part of the city. The three of us, Marcus, Serena, and myself, met. The initial interaction was somewhat stilted. Conversations felt forced, punctuated by prolonged silences, yet there was a discernible shift in their demeanor. Less arrogance, more humility. Serena formally offered an apology, devoid of any justifications or rationalizations, simply acknowledging the harm that had been inflicted. I did not extend immediate forgiveness. True absolution requires time. However, I did acknowledge her effort. Marcus shared details of his new employment, a position offering a modest but honest salary, and spoke of the sense of liberation he experienced, no longer being burdened by the pressure of maintaining unrealistic pretenses. He also described the conversations he was initiating with Elias, even at the child's tender age of 2 years, focusing on the importance of kindness and respect. 3 months subsequent to the restaurant incident, I finally had the opportunity to truly meet Elias. Marcus and Serena extended an invitation to a public park. My grandson was actively engaged in play among the swings, his joyous laughter filling the air. Upon noticing me, he exhibited a moment of hesitation, as I was, in essence, a stranger to him. Marcus, however, knelt down to his son's level and gently indicated me. "Elias," he said, "this is your grandma Eleanor, the person who made you that scarf you love so much." I had continued to knit for him, sending gifts through Marcus, without any expectation of recognition. The boy turned his large, curious eyes towards me. Then, with the unreserved trust inherent in children, he ran towards me and embraced my legs. My heart felt as though it was simultaneously shattering and being meticulously reassembled. We spent the remainder of the afternoon immersed in play. Elias enthusiastically guided me down the slide, demonstrated the proper technique for swinging, and showed me how to search for tiny insects beneath the rocks. Marcus and Serena observed from a nearby bench, granting us personal space while remaining a comforting presence. As the sun began its descent, Elias yawned in my arms, his head resting heavily against my shoulder. "Grandma," he murmured sleepily, "you smell nice." Those simple words resonated more profoundly than any elaborate apology could have. They signified a future. They represented a possibility. They suggested that perhaps something positive could indeed emerge from all this accumulated pain. The process of rebuilding was gradual. There were instances of regression, moments when old ingrained patterns attempted to resurface. However, a fundamental alteration had occurred. Now, there was an underlying foundation of sincerity, well-defined boundaries, and demonstrable effort. Marcus began visiting me with regularity, not out of obligation or need, but simply to be present, to inquire about my day, to listen to anecdotes about his father that he had previously been unwilling to acknowledge. Serena, to my surprise, evolved into a humble learner. She sought my insights regarding my restaurant ventures, the strategic business decisions I had made, and the enduring legacy Rob and I had painstakingly constructed. Her motivation was not to replicate my achievements, but to genuinely grasp the principles she had never been adequately taught. 6 months later, on the occasion of my 67th birthday, Marcus orchestrated a modest dinner, held not in an opulent venue, but within the comforting confines of my own home. He prepared the meal himself, utilizing recipes I had imparted to him during his boyhood, which he had subsequently neglected. Serena contributed flowers sourced from the local market, eschewing elaborate floral arrangements. Elias presented me with a drawing rendered in crayons, characterized by its delightfully crooked lines, intended to depict him and me. I have since proudly displayed it on my refrigerator, where it remains to this day. That evening, after Elias had fallen asleep on my familiar sofa, Marcus gently took my hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "for not abandoning us, for granting us this precious opportunity to become better." I returned the pressure of his hand. "Thank you for embracing it, for choosing genuine transformation over mere pronouncements." Today, 2 years after that defining evening at the restaurant, my life bears a different complexion, yet retains certain familiar elements. I continue to reside in my modest dwelling. My vehicle remains the same reliable older model. My attire is still understated. However, Marcus now comprehends that these choices are rooted not in financial deficiency, but in deeply held values. I continue to manage my restaurants. Occasionally, Marcus accompanies me to administrative meetings, demonstrating a genuine interest in understanding the business, not with the intention of assuming control, but to grasp the essence of his father's legacy. Serena has found meaningful employment with a reputable charitable organization, dedicating her social media expertise to genuine causes rather than self-aggrandizement. And Elias, my cherished Elias, visits my home twice each week. We engage in baking cookies together. I recount stories about his grandfather to him. I endeavor to instill in him the understanding that a person's true worth is not measured by their attire or their possessions, but by the depth of their character and the impact of their actions. The path to reconciliation has not erased the pain entirely. The scars persist. There are days when recollections of past indignities resurface, still capable of causing a pang of hurt. There are moments when I observe Marcus and Serena, and a residual part of me remains guarded, instinctively protecting my heart from potential future hurt. Yet, concurrently, there are periods of uninhibited laughter, of authentic connection, and of a burgeoning love that is learning to flourish independent of conditions or transactional exchanges. I have come to understand that establishing personal boundaries is not an act of cruelty, that demanding respect is not a display of selfishness, and that safeguarding one's dignity does not diminish one's capacity for love. Furthermore, I have learned that it is never too late to impart lessons, even to one's adult children, and that every individual inherently deserves to be treated with fundamental humanity, irrespective of their financial standing or their mode of dress. That evening at the restaurant served as a profound turning point. It was not because I disclosed my affluence, but because I finally asserted my intrinsic value, and that inherent worth was never contingent upon the number of restaurants I possessed or the balance in my bank account. It was rooted in my humanity, my dignity, and my inherent right to be respected solely for my existence. Rob would undoubtedly have been proud, not of the business empire we meticulously built, but of the woman who ultimately stood firm in its defense when it mattered most. Presently, I frequent that same restaurant on a regular basis. Sometimes I dine alone, relishing the tranquility. Other times I share the experience with Brenda, celebrating our enduring and unbreakable friendship, and on occasion I am joined by Marcus, Serena, and Elias, as we collectively forge new memories upon the foundation of past experiences. Respect is not an inherited trait, It is earned, it is deliberately chosen, and it is meticulously protected. This is especially true when it proves difficult, and even more so when it elicits pain, because ultimately the sole possession we truly command is our dignity, and no one can divest you of it unless you permit them to do so. Did you find my narrative compelling? And from which city are you experiencing this story? I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments section. Should you have enjoyed this account, your support through a super thanks would be greatly appreciated, enabling me to continue producing similar narratives. Thank you immensely for your kind and generous support. I eagerly anticipate your commentary regarding this story. On your screen, you will find recommendations for 2 additional life stories that I highly endorse. My channel offers a wealth of further content, so please consider subscribing. Until our next life story, with affection and profound respect.